Welcome to Traveling Molly's. Here we are once again, the second Monday of every month, as we've done for nearly 20 years now. Tonight we'll be starting our open mic very soon. I'd like though now to introduce my co-host Nina Corwin. Here she is.
I missed everybody last month when we had Kim Adenisiu and Adam Henze, but I'm so glad to be here with Pam Uschuk and Bill Pitt Root, who I think you're going to really like what you hear tonight. So welcome all. We usually start, Al and I, doing a poem apiece, and then we go into the open mic, and then we just kind of roll along from there. So I think since we were together last, there was another election. There was one before, there was one after, and so I wrote a collage, having noticed that there's a big similarity between what sportscasters say in a tight game and what people say on the election reporting, because you're on there for hours and you have to come up with a whole lot of shit to say. So this is called Margin of Victory. It's a collage from Dan Rather to Yogi Berra and back. Elections are like a box of chocolates. This one's a crotch grabber, folks, and I'll bet a handful of nuts it won't be over anytime soon. Let me tell you how tight this election is. It's tight as the rusted lug nuts on a 57 Chevy, like a too small bathing suit on the ride home from Coney Island. This race is harder to call than a deaf hog in a sassafras tree, sticky as a flypaper jungle on a humid night, and closer than the creep on the rush hour subway. I mean, tight as a prairie dog's butt in a dust bowl. Talk about a knockdown, ding-dong, steel cage death match. We've seen more ups and downs tonight than a Viagra conference. They'll be counting votes until the cows have literally gone to sleep. Frankly, I don't know whether to whine to watch or bark at the moon. Thank you.
Thank you, Nina.
So yeah, and here's my my co-host, Al DeGenova, with a poem of his.
Well, this poem is completely off the political subject and onto the sentimentality of Christmas. I just wrote kind of a blog newsletter for the organization I'm working for, talking about how if it wasn't for sentimentality cracking open those emotions, sometimes we kind of get fogged over with our feelings. But so it's my defense of sentimentality. But here's the only Christmas poem I've ever written. So it's a little older, but I figured it's the right time of year to do this. The name of the poem is My Only Christmas Poem. Here's to the Christmas tree that fell, breaking our tiny glass heart ornaments, dangerous shiny slivers stuck in the carpet nap. To the evergreen needles swept into a pile, to the roasted potatoes burnt and stuck to the bottom of the pan. To your father's last Christmas when he made shy Courtney sing. Here's to the bottle of wine. Here's to blown fuses, to stale cookies, to all the gifts that were wrong, to Dexter Gordon's Have Yourself a Merry Little Christmas. Here's to Italy's 7 fishes and to a Charlie Brown Christmas tree. Here's to Linus and Scrooge. Here's to building toy sailing ships at 2 a.m. Here's to the year we almost missed. Here's to our 12-year-old son who tells us dancing in front of the tree is way too corny. Just a little bit of sentimental Christmas. So now let's start our open mic. And I'm just looking at our list here. And let's start with Kevin Shine. Are you ready?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me? Yes, thank you. Well, I'm Kevin Shine, and I wanted to start by saying that the timing of this reading is fortuitous because just last week, my first ever poetry collection was published by Kelsey Books. So tonight, thank you. Tonight, I will be reading a few selections from the book. And just so you can see it, there it is. The Faith of Fragile Things. Well, the first poem that I'll read from it is The Illustrated Daughter. And you might be familiar with it because it appeared in After Hours, summer 2021. And the poem explores the emotions of a father learning to make peace with his daughter's tattoos, many of them. The Illustrated Daughter. My daughter's first tattoo, an E.E. Cummings line inked in cursive script across her shoulder blade, set off alarms. But she was 21. I held my tongue, relieved at least that her disfigurement was poetic as it was discreet. I should have known. The first foretold a rising tide of ink no father could resist, until when fully dressed, her colors spilled out unconfined at neckline, ankles, nape, and wrist. Here, the badge of her career, a nurse's face in reds and blues. There, in tribute to grandmother's love, a lighthouse beams across a thigh. A needle glides upon the other. Her forearm and her husband's share a sleeve, colorized indelibly, unfrayed by daily wear. In time, I looked upon her marks, half bemused, not thinking I would ever comprehend until a rolled up sleeve revealed the image of a plumed quill pen, the nib dipped in a bottle, embellished with her sister's name. A writer and cartoon creator, an honored guest within a sea of stories crashing on a coast of ink and skin. As if an inner tide had turned, the whole that had begun with poetry, extended by the emblems of her heart, became a gallery adorned with living works of art. At last, all reservation put to rest, I saw, unblinded by my fears, her tattoos form a whirling arabesque, so beautiful it stained my face with tears. Thank you. My second poem is The Minuet Before Goodbye, inspired by my adventurous and talented daughter, Mary. In fact, Mary did the drawing on the cover of my book. I also want to mention, well, I did mention it, so let me just go on to The Minuet Before Goodbye. On Sunday afternoon, my daughter calls me back while making lunches, saving every penny for treks she takes to destinations off the grid. Clinking in the background is her butter knife, the clapper in a bell of mayonnaise 900 miles away. Her voice, bejeweled by her originality, rolls through me in a rising tide. I stream like seaweed in her current. Our catch-up conversation crests on words more said than understood. You have her eyes. The last time you were here, the years go flying by. On another day, her hand in mine, Our faces close, her bucket full of shells. She held one to my ear. I said, "Hello, is this the ocean?" But now she has to go. Friends are waiting at the door. She says goodbye, not wanting me to hear their rollicking commotion. The phone held to my ear, I strain to hear the ocean. Thank you. This third poem was inspired by my grandson, Logan, who is about 1 year old at the time I wrote this poem. And my daughter was bathing him, and I was sort of watching through the door, and it occurred to me how amazingly wondrous water must seem to a child of that age. And that's what led to Logan's bath. Logan, 14 months, stands beside his mother on his knees. Swishing with her hand, she tests the water in the tub, fiddles with the faucet, and finds the perfect mix. Leaning in, belly pressed to porcelain, entranced by water gushing from the spout, Logan slaps above the waterline in pure delight. His perfect fingers break the silver skin. Dipping deeper in, he sees his submerged arms refracted to the right. He makes a fist and laughs, discovering that water can't be squished, but it will bend the light. How little does he comprehend of optical illusions, of volume that his hand displaces, of pipes and drains, of stains dissolved in aqueous solution, of rites of absolution, of faith in God's reunion when we rise, of immersion in the meanings water comes to symbolize. My daughter lifts him up and in. He splashes, kicks, his eyes go wide. He has no words to analyze or name this wondrous stuff. His laughter is enough. Standing in the open door, I watch and realize I'd give the world to see the water gush with Logan's eyes. Thank you. Just one last poem, short one.
No, Kevin, I
Yes.
think we're out of time.
Okay.
Just a reminder for all the open micers, it's 5 minutes or just a little bit less.
Okay.
In any case, somebody who we've had not enough times for my taste, Noel Jones, good to have you here tonight.
It's good to be here, especially to hear Bill and Pam. I'm actually just going to do 2 poems, a little short one that's newer and a longer one that's from 2007, but they're both reflections on growing up in Alaska. This is called Lullabies for the Lost. Somewhere in a recess between breaths, you remember running after her. Thump, 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 along the edge of the woods, your small feet feeling light, pounding the dirt trail from your house to hers. Tall spears of fireweed, a pink blur in your peripheral vision. Eyes fixed on the bounce of her golden ponytail, sunlight flooding your brain, bones, belly, and then a voice called you home. And this one's untitled, but I kind of affectionately call it Blue Volcanoes in my mind. As moss green islands hover round the bay, the breaching whales dance beneath the birds, all white and greedy for the same herring. My kayak like a belly rides the swells, slices at an angle each new crest, and gives a berth as wide as they may need. But they are not the only ones that feed. An otter plays on one side, now the other, and beats an abalone on its chest. The waves subside, I glide by one great rock, an island pushing two bald eagles up. Standing side by side, they share a fish that twists its scales to catch the cloudy light. Around the other islands hangs a mist, and yet the snow-capped plume remains sun-kissed, while back on shore the water laps the rocks. The Sitka spruce are pushing at the sky as sea mist snakes its way around the hills, and Tlingit totems tell their silent tales. I took for granted all that I was given and left to hunt a cache of girlhood dreams. When I look back on all I left behind, I fear such pristine nature's hard to find. But even harder still, the way it feels, bobbing like a puffin on the waves, each swell alternating high to low, one moment at its peak and looking down a gray-blue skirt of water from my boat that sweeps into a valley yawning deep, then slow, my perch descends from lofty highs, then sinks. I watch the water mountains rise on either side and taste their salty spray. The low point of hyperbola suspends. I am so insignificant, my heart, a molecule adhering to the whole. Its tiny beat inconsequentially throwing itself against its bony cage. Erasable, yet I am not erased. Permitted to remain only by grace, not so unlike this current race of man. There is no such humility found here, not in this city filing between tall skyscrapers with their swaying silver beams, nor in the subway down under the hum, nor squeezed through tunnels taking in their tolls. There's nothing quite as humbling as the sea, and yet we leave it to grow vertebra and brace our scaffoldings against the sky until our chimneys puff out such foul clouds we alter the pastel hues of sunset and make rivers shrivel low and brown till no one dares to swim or eat its fish, wrinkling their noses at the very thought. These rivers were once great and mighty gods that struggle now to resist human odds. I miss the home to which I can't return, the turquoise creeks that feed the glacial lakes, the flaming pinks, tall spears of fireweed, blue lupin, wild rose, and columbine, the waist-high grass that no one thinks to cut, views of mountain chains, no sign of man, the telltale puff of pressure seeping out of blue volcanoes overdue to spout. Our battles rage in deserts round the globe, like avatars run by remote control. My brother Johnny surges among them. In full faith, silver salmon swim upstream. There is a wide gray ocean between us. There is a wide gray ocean between us. My brother John, who played with me in snow, in high grass, and built forts in the thick woods. We played imaginary war games there. And now the polar ice caps heave and calve, and still we seek to drill for Arctic oil as divers stick their flagpoles under sea to claim each new black drop from down below. Are we so desperate for this poison teat, our black lips, tongues, and bellies never sated, pull up from hell the milk on which we nurse? We guzzle at the muffler. The eagles hop and push into the wind. Dark bodies circle twice, then disappear. A whale's silent fluke slips out of view. The gray sea swallows them, saying nothing. Warm Chinook winds forecast early spring, while snow caps shrink, the tree lines fast advance. When blue volcanoes tremble at the sky, will we have the lack of shame to cry at what with pithy words can poets do, but fling our notes in bottles down river? We sad romantics turn our backs before our glass and paper crash against the banks. When ready, we will bring our treasures home, we swear, to live among the misty hills like ghosts among the totems, listening to everything we missed while wandering. I fear the nature that I miss will be preserved only in memory's domain, a snow globe on a leather inlaid desk, staged like a lucite deal toy at some bank, a frosted scape of islands and the sea, complete with breaching whales and eagles, while a playful otter rubs his whiskered nose and a frozen blue volcano never blows. But then again, on optimistic days, I do recall the sea was here before presumptuous beasts crawled out onto her shore, and that our urgent sense of time is just indicative of our short, sweet lifespans as individuals and race of man. Our worry is conceit and audacious. The sea, regardless, will be fine without us. But I cannot help wishing that we could dash the clock of our own damning greed, find alternatives to drilling holes in frigid waters underneath the poles. How long before the sea loses patience and conjures spiral storms that take us back? Who among us can say he really knows which blue volcano will be next to blow? Thank you.
Very
Now-
nice. Thank you.
Just a quick word. Pam is telling me that she's having a hard time with her students having a hard time getting in. Let's see if we can solve that problem. Can you clarify what's going on? And either Bill or Al might be able to help.
Well, I just got a message from one of them saying that she's been trying everything to get in and hasn't been able to. And I know that I had a bunch of students that were going to come, and so I'll send them an email with that link that you sent, but I don't know.
Hopefully they will get it. We said,
Pam, what I'll do is I'm going to put the link into the chat. There's
I got the
well,
link.
we've got a number of people watching on YouTube, so
Okay.
I don't know what
Oh,
problems.
so maybe some of them are on YouTube, these people.
Yeah, they may be. That's where we're live streaming, is on YouTube.
Oh, okay.
right, the only the open mic people and us are in the Zoom space.
Oh, okay.
Have the email that went out has a YouTube link. So hopefully some of them are already on and you
Yeah,
can
Okay.
there's
I
14
wondered
people
where they
watching.
were.
Yeah.
I
So
know.
There's definitely some people
They're like,
watching.
oh, we'll be there. We're going to be there. We can't wait. So I'll just send them this link, and hopefully they'll my one especially who's very sad.
okay, well, we'll get that one figured out in a second, but
Thank you. I'm sorry to
Thank-
bother everybody.
thank you, Noelle, for your poems. And while we're at it, I'll just say hello to all the folks out there on YouTube who are watching. And we're going to move on very quickly with our open mic. Someone I haven't seen in a while, Bill Yarrow. Let's hear what you got.
Thank you, Al. I'm going to read a poem that you published in the latest issue of After Hours. This poem is called Spinoza and the Spiders, and it has an epigraph from Isaac Disraeli's Curiosities of Literature, a work which came out at the beginning of the 19th century. And the epigraph is, after protracted studies, Spinoza would unbend his mind by setting spiders to fight each other. And so this is the poem. The author of Ethics takes a break from his geometric philosophy to watch spiders fight each other, the sight of which convulses and dissolves him in a moderate laughter. The author of Ethics unbends his mind by collecting spiders and placing them in glass jars, hoping they will, to his greedy amusement, attack, wound, and ultimately kill each other. The author of Ethics sees nothing but entertainment and mental relaxation in life and death struggles of creatures from the insect world set against each other, not by nature, nor fate, nor chance, but man. The author of Ethics, blind to the irony of a world in which a sadistic God pits human spiders against human spiders in a glass jar grudge match existence that ends in catcalls, cackles, cadavers, and yawns. Thank you. Really nice to see Pam and Bill. Very happy to be here. Thank you.
Great, great to have you with us again.
Thanks,
So
Nina.
how about Lauren, I hope I don't butcher your name. Lauren DeGiulio Bell.
You got it right. Thank you.
I was
Thank you,
going to say
everyone.
De Julio because I'm studying Spanish, but I got it
Yeah,
right.
it's Italian, so a lot of people say it with the H sound, but you got it correct. Thank you. Thank you all for having me, and I'm excited to be here. So I'm working on a collection of kind of just what it means to be a woman in the world. So these are 3 poems from that collection that is yet to be published, but hopefully soon. So the first one is called Murmurs. Billy Collins said poetry involves a history of the human heart. When I trace the lineage of mine, the texts in which my history rests seem faded, unclear, like pages in a novel worn by time. Where the heart should beat clearly, wires get crossed, tangled, masking routes to freedom. In this reliving of the past, sounds reverberate slowly, gradually, then crescendo to a symphony of chaos, laughter, beauty, despair, connecting arteries simultaneously tenuous, serene, creating a tension where wisdom and experience intersect, neither knowing whom should go first. This heart it builds, full of wonder, hope, love, and grace amidst broken paths and detoured junctures. Were one to read it, the story it tells would alter every time. Much like our histories, our hearts beat rhythms varied and complex, complicated and beautiful, histories which change the world. I know not where mine will lead, nor really where it comes from. I can only follow this heart and hope it leads me home. The next one is called Lost. Sometimes I feel lost like a child in a forest of conifers, needles falling gently off, cascading to the ground without a place to land. I don't want to feel this way. I have so much to be grateful for: health, family, housing, love, and yet there's something missing. I want to feel found. I want to float like a feather in the breeze, crisp air, yet tender, and you would scoop me up softly, slowly, making sure I don't blow away. You would utter, I love you, in the faintest whisper, not because you don't mean it, but because the echoes of gentle voices remain with us longer, and I, in return, would say thank you for giving me light. And then the last one is called My Honest Poem, which my students, when I teach high school English, and we're looking at spoken word, and there's a spoken word poet, Rudy Francisco, who has a poem entitled My Honest Poem. So we did kind of our own version of that. So this is kind of based on his. My name is Lauren. When I was a kid, I always wanted to be called Kate. I love my full name, my nicknames, Lore, Bird, and Lou, because my twin brother couldn't pronounce his R's, but not Lori, too common. I believe milk should never go first in a cereal bowl. I like chocolate, the darker the better, sunflowers and warm breezes. I've never seen Game of Thrones, and my heart breaks for others' pain, yet I don't always allow myself to feel my own. I'm fractured and fragmented like shards of glass you get stuck in your foot when sweeping the broken vase off the floor. Painful yet beautiful, small enough to hurt, bright enough to glisten in the sun. I give you the shirt off my back even when I'm freezing, but never think to blanket myself in the cold. I'm warm, light in a cavernous place, afraid to go deeper sometimes for fear the claustrophobia will suffocate me till I can't feel my breath, all the while knowing that deep holds all the treasures. My confidence is a car that won't start, sometimes, not all. Engine sputtering, rooting, turn over, baby, come on, turn over. Wrinkled nose, furrowed brow, patting the dashboard of my soul, hoping that last twist of the key, rev, 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 will set everything in motion, stop. I think small talk is crucial to enter in, but true connection comes from depth, and I keep repeating deep because deep is really where I like to go, feel, be, which sets me apart from many whose surfaces run shallow as the tide. My thoughts, like hummingbirds, flutter and dip, flying at warp speed, disconnected yet threaded through a million miles of nuance and energy, adventure and passion, landing squarely on the petals of life. I don't even know where I stand. My heart aches for solace. I'm worried about abandonment. I'm afraid if I let you in just a little bit closer, 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 you'll see my scars and what I wish to be and run. But I welcome you with open arms just the same. My name is Lauren. Work in progress, letters unwritten, love unfolded in uneven patterns whose map is a canvas still to be drawn upon. And if you come closer, 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 I might just give you the pen. That's it. Thank you. And thanks so much for letting me join you. I'm excited to hear everybody.
Thank you. Hope you'll come again, Lauren. Speaking of spoken word, why don't we welcome up here Mr. Bob Chicoine.
Following up on Al's defense of the sentimental, I've got a few Hallmark cards for you. Paris, 1913. Now, since the leaves have fallen that drank up so much I had forgotten, I can hear your wind chimes from far across town, old love, playing Stravinsky's Rite of Spring, all the way through to the riot at the end. When you stick out your tongue, it's not to give me the old sass, but to let whatever thought is on the tip of it be picked up by the wind and carried off, even if the wind anymore is just my breath. The last train of the night that always tries to win your heart as it rolls by your house sounds out its honks in your arrhythmia to tell you if yours skips another beat, it will be sure to bypass one of its stops along the way. Nearly every early November. To assist me in the voting booth, I used to bring along the recommendations from both morning newspapers and from the Independent Voters of Illinois and a copy of the original Federalist. But this election day, I bring with the note you passed to me in class 60-odd years ago, and am sure that I will check only the boxes for heart and wit and soul. How softly you used to say the word caress. Even after I have forgotten your touch, I will hear that call to sex, to mercy, to somnolence. Laconic for Steve Canine, who was the owner and operator of Canine's Corner Tavern at Devon and Newgart, who died in his 80s after marrying in his 70s. He fell in love late in life so that he wouldn't use up the words darling, honey, sweetheart, that he had whispered on his own for many years in different voices and accents to try them out, but never loudly so as not to chance breaking their spell. We are the pets Jesus comes home to after his long vacation, wondering how much we missed him. Whether we conserved our bowls of water and food to make them last, and which one of us will emerge from our hiding places to greet him first. I was sure that at the end of life, when I might come to some understanding, it would be of the essence of love or the eternity of mercy, or where the pathetic self repairs to afterward. But what I did suddenly comprehend was Ohm's law, Occam's razor, and the Pythagorean theorem, linchpins of the working world and the logical mind that I no longer had any need of. The Great Resignation. After the 2022 election, all the conspiracy theorists in America gave up the crackpot within themselves and went back to believing in Santa Claus. But Santa was content in his semi-retirement and did not wish to be longed for again. Besides, he thought the Grinch by now made much more sense. You would feel so good to miss if I could remember who you were. Yet I do remember how nice it was to miss you just last year. And lastly, my parents who were not profane would say, "Why, you little so-and-so." And pleased I was to be two so's, this so and that so, the dutiful so and the rascal so, animal so and spirit so, the earthly so and Venusian so, the young so and the grown-up so. Past grown-up now, I've lost one so along the way, but the last so is enough to say to them and to you, my big and small, my night and day, my when and how, just this: I love you. Thank you, everybody.
So much more refreshing than a poem about soul, a poem about so. I love that. It was more than two so's. It was at least 10, right? So the next person, how about Robbie Nestor? Robbie, good to see you again.
Nice to be here. I'm going to start with an Arizona poem in honor of our features. And I took liberties with the facts, so excuse that. The poem is called Here There Be Dragons. Once maps ended at the edge of the world. These unknown places spawned unruly spirits, vapors issuing from cracks in the packed earth, magnetic shifts that make a nonsense of the ordinary east and west. These open spaces thrilled us by breaking all the rules. Outside of strange Sedona, where saguaro cactuses the size of trees offer arms full of white blossoms to the bees, it's said that energy still gathers beneath the surface, unloosing light shows in the sky, dinosaurs and aliens, as documented in the secret archive no one has ever seen. Trace this to Brodmann's area number 9, part of the frontal cortex responsible for seeing a line of sense into the world, picking constellations out of a star-packed sky. Remember those bright flashes people saw at dusk in downtown Tuscaloosa over the deserted Walmart. The perfect circles burned into a field of broken corn stalks, metal monolith high on some Wyoming ridge. We're looking for traces of the ones who left them. No one on earth could burn a circle quite that perfect. Now hundreds show up on that forsaken ridge with Geiger counters, magnifying glasses, seeking a clue, just hoping to be transported to some elsewhere more congenial than our world. My second poem is called What We Made of Them, and it's more a Southern California poem, because that's where I live right now and have for a long time. What we made of them. When my son was 3 or 4, raccoons inhabited the sewer outside our house. Every night, they'd line up in the dark opening to the storm drain, a neighborhood as populous as ours, eyes glowing like stars gone nova, My son called them cycorns. I don't know where he got the word, but it suited them, lurking as they did close to the dumpster, snarling if we threatened to come near, choosing the delicacies they most preferred from torn plastic garbage bags, full of wilted heads of lettuce, flaccid carrots, spoiled beef stew they extracted with their agile fingers. My neighbor came home one day from the grocery to find a raccoon and her kits standing in her kitchen. They had entered through the dog door, foraged in the pantry for the 10-pound bag of kibble, ravaged the fruit bowl. She had to call a wildlife specialist to remove the raccoon family from the house before they shredded the sofa, filled the place with fleas. How far these urban dwelling raccoons were from the meticulous and clever creatures I had seen on nature films, with pointed elven faces, washing up before they ate. Orchards and woods are mostly gone now. Sewers serve as raccoon freeways, shortcuts to the closest park or vacant lot. Thank you.
Thank you, Robbie. Very nice. We're always anxious to hear your new work when you bring it. Next up, Leonard Lund. How are you doing?
I am doing fine. How about you?
Glad to be here.
Oh, yes. Yes, always. My latest collection dropped last week, Cutting the Sunbeam. And I'm going to give you 3 pieces from that this evening. The other children follow a snake's line around the small classroom. Paper hats for uniforms and for obedience. Above the scuff of worn shoes on bare dirt, they sing a doggerel in some foreign tongue, understanding only the teacher's smile. Her own hair falling free of folded deadwood, Marie Claire has other business. Standing completely tall on a small stool in the shadowed furnace room, she raises wooling shears to find what might be revealed if she cuts the room's single shaft of sunshine in half during its fall from skylight to floor. If she tilts the universe by just a few degrees of adolescent curiosity. The least of these. Feet and back toward the camera, a child lies on the broad sidewalk in front of shops and other businesses. Occupied Polish city, May of 1941. That's all the image and caption relate with any certainty. We don't know if he's alive or dead. The expressions of those around him don't tell us, even those of the other children. He could be tired of walking or waiting, and so is resting. Perhaps a sibling said something taunting or unkind, or a parent said no to buying chocolates, and so he's throwing a tantrum. No hand seems to reach out to him. No stranger's compassion turns to see what's wrong. It feels like his invisibility is complete. He is illusory, a figment. And this is where I get lost, become frightened, turn inside myself to find some anchor. For even my grandfather, openly racist and disdainful of others, taught me by example to take a moment, cross the street, kneel at the side of someone's possible distress. And finally, Doris and Rock, Saturday evening. Tipping lightly in and out of sleep, half seeing the movie, she imagines lying back on the beach as the sun sets, or being embraced in the grass at the edge of the woods. She thinks of fingers tracing her collarbone, lips tasting the nape of her neck, her head just right on his shoulder. The images are wonderfully calming and blissfully not. He thinks of those fingers and lips being his, of the neck and throat as hers. An hour into the movie, her head just so, he feels the familiar sensation as the circulation in his arms slips from asleep to comatose. At a certain point, this too is romance after the kids are asleep. Thank you all very much.
My mind is kind of blown by the richness of, and the array of all these different poems and the visuals and the concepts that are braided together. So our tech guy, Bill Harrison, who I can't thank enough, is going to read a piece. Is it from the upcoming book? Which will be out on
June 6th, 2023.
in June.
Yes. The book is called Making the Low Notes, and it's a memoir about my years in the music business. This is an excerpt, and it takes place when I am 24. April 6th, 1981. I'm wrenched from sleep at around 5 a.m. by something gouging out my guts with a bayonet. I try shifting positions, but can't find one that eases the scraping sensation a few inches southwest of my navel. I stare at my nightstand clock, loath to breathe for fear of exacerbating whatever the hell this is. Did I eat something rotten at yesterday's brunch? Is this some demonic flatulence? At 6:05, desperate, I call Ruth, my ex-girlfriend. She's likely on her way to work as a radiology resident at St. Francis Hospital in Evanston. I'm the last person she'd expect to hear from, especially at this hour. I skip the pleasantries and describe my symptoms to her. I don't know what it is, Ruth tells me, but you ought to get yourself to an ER. Don't wait. I'd never been a patient in a hospital. The thought of it scares the bejesus out of me. Can I come to St. Francis? I trust that I'll get the straight dope from Dr. Ruth and her colleagues. Oh, okay. Come in through the ER and have them page me. Next, I ring my current girlfriend, Lindy, who immediately offers to drive me up to Evanston. I throw on yesterday's clothes and hobble down 2 long flights of stairs, bent over like a 90-year-old. At the hospital, I'm hustled into an exam room. Ruth materializes with another doctor who asks me a few questions and palpates my abdomen. I fight the urge to punch him in the kidneys. We're going to get some x-rays to make sure, but I'm 95% positive you're going to need an emergency appendectomy. My heart gallops toward my suddenly arid throat. You should call whoever you want to notify. Now, we'll probably take you right from radiology to the OR. I feel like throwing up on this guy's shoes. My mother grabs the phone on the 7th ring. She had 1 foot out the door of her Bergenfield, New Jersey garden apartment when I dialed her number. I explain what's happening and assure her I'll call as soon as possible after the surgery. Ruth returned to the radiology department about 15 minutes after my photo shoot, brandishing a fistful of x-rays. She's practically beaming. You have a classic case of appendicitis. These images are going into our department's teaching file. Fan-fucking-tastic. I guess our breakup hadn't been as contentious as I remembered. Either that or she's conspiring to have me dispatched on the operating table. Moments later, somebody jams an IV into my left forearm as a man in a long white coat leans over my gurney. You have anesthesia, is what I hear him say. No, I haven't had any anesthesia yet. He smiles with just a hint of condescension. I'm the anesthesiologist. I'll be giving you the medication in your IV. Right. Stupid me. I'm out before we rumble to the elevator. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Looking forward to seeing that collection. Oh, next up, Carrie McGath.
Who, by the way, just graduated yesterday with her PhD from UIC, right?
Yeah.
Oh, all kinds of congratulations going out tonight.
Thank you, and congrats to all of you. This has been, I'm not on mute, right? Okay. Sorry, I've been going in and out because on video because my cat's been a little jealous of me because I've been spending too much time on the laptop today. So she's not liking that. But yes, thank you all so much. This is awesome.
Hey, Carrie.
Much.
Carrie, do you have another light you could put on? Because it's hard to see you.
I kind of, I'm usually in the dark. I have a very dark house.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, it's probably as good as I can do. My bedroom's I have the overhead on even. But anyway, thank you, Nina, for inviting me to be a part of the open mic. And also, I've loved all of this so much. And I love it. So I'm going to read 3 poems from my collection, my second collection I'm currently working on, The Luck of Anadonia. And it's very desert poems. So it's takes place in the desert. So the first poem I'm going to write actually is a cento, which I love a cento now. You know, I know you all probably know what this is, a collage poem, essentially, right? So I took this poem from a 1970 issue of Desert Magazine that I found when I was in Joshua Tree. So I'll read that, and then I'm going to read the Vegas Showgirl poem, and then a new one. So, okay. Here's my cento. To the sagacious sage grows. One day old, sage toddling. Mother grows, keeping them under protection of the sagebrush. But to stray is essential. Must prove such a long survival. Internal warming machinery. They sleep under her wings at night. They hatch. They run and hide. Mother creates a diversion. The old phony broken wing routine, flopping, almost caught. The chicks whistle plaintively. The cocks stay far from her, mother. And then one is granted entry, clad in full nuptial plumage, gulping air, inflating orange balloons of bare skin, a tasteful splash of color. Building brewing for his pompous cakewalk. He takes a few steps forward, orange inflated and bouncing, a drumming for 3 miles. In January, the cocks practice privacy, It will soon be curtain time again. Gotta love a mating dance, right? This one's called Orange. You can't kick that high no more. That faceless man standing over me again. My cold sweat makes the bed a stone. He is judging me again, lording over me, reminding me of it all. I've had it with this shit. I head to our little blue bitch, that humming steel of blue from Detroit. He is like a bad penny. The engine turns over and the sands act like my Midwestern snow under the proud rubber of Akron. We will get through this. The headlights see nothing. It's all before us, like that faceless penny man, my nightmares worse these days. No more being trapped in the mirror as I look into the rear view, not realizing sunset is teasing again, showing me its colors like the trees about this time of year in that other Midwestern life so far from now. Then more orange gyrates ahead of me, almost like a dance. I would like to dance again. The Buick urges me to slow, to take it slow. I can't argue with big blue steel. I've been trying to do just that. No dice, love. A smooth, glittering, smoothing, all the more just in front of me, like a mirage. The ones I run toward, desperate. They never get old. This orange dancing moment stops, turns, more glitter, a face, tears, smeared lipstick, tired eyes, overworked just like mine. I fold across the velvety bucket seat that is worn out of wool and velvet and spots. I guess I'm not really folding, not like paper does. The door creaks open like a movie. Her color will never fit in here, at least not in front with me. I fold the seat down. Now that folds like paper. People don't. Even in the darkness, away from the headlights, she glows. Get in, it's okay. Her tail feathers fold over the top of her head, canopying her like an eggshell. Lost showgirl? She nods in the frame of the rear view. The little blue bitch sputters back to a life I haven't seen her have in a long while. See, we all needed this. My last poem is, I love found photographs and such. So Victorian photography, especially with morning veils and such, interests me a lot. So that's what this is. Morning veil with onyx, a still life for a found photograph. I cannot discern your lips or eyes, but I know you're under there somewhere. Then I see you have dainty hands. We meet and I bring the onyx. I found a man to capture us on metal. He himself smells something metallic, and his scent has the heaviness of a whale's heart. He watches as I climb into a veil as well and stand with you. This will take so long. But at least you're killing time with me, killing some of those mourning months imposed upon you as a woman. You must mourn. You are now a widow. His mustache is sewn into the lining of your dress. You tell me that you hated his mustache, that it made him look so old. Now we stand with sand burning the bottoms of our feet. We stand with that heavy scent of this man, and our spines groan from standing so straight and for so long. But we continue to wait for the bulb to burst, to reveal us burning on metal and mercury. Thank you.
Thank you, Carrie. I love seeing former features come back to reading the open mic, and I'm gonna call up Jim Ferris in a moment, but I want to make two announcements. One is we like to pass our virtual hat. Al has just put the link where we have people donate to the features through the PayPal donate button on the After Hours website. So please, please, please throw some money in the hat, or even better, buy their books, and they will mention them. And the one other thing, next month, we'll have Marilyn Nelson with us, another Black Earth Institute fellow, and one of our own from the Oak Park days, Jim Madigan. So, Jim Ferris, show us your face. I look forward to hearing you. What you got?
Here's my face. Thank you, Nina. And thanks to Al too. It's a pleasure to come back to Traveling Molly's and share poems with all y'all. Really enjoyed hearing what I've heard so far. So I have three poems that I'd like to share. They're real recent things. This first one is called Talking with the President of the United States. This must have been a dream, but it feels like a memory, because when you meet the President of the United States, you would remember it, or at least a guy like me would, or should, unless he has dementia or something. But the president, he's looking at my shoes. I mean, everybody looks at my left shoe because it's so built up and everything. But the president of the United States wants to talk about my shoes. And I know I should feel embarrassed or something because my shoes don't even come close to matching. When a kid on the street says, "How come your shoes don't match?" I tell him, "Because my feet don't match." No wonder they didn't want me in the army. But all the commander in chief wants to talk about is my shoes. He even notices my right shoe. That's probably why he's president. Now I have to look at his shoes too. And very soon, one of his very important handlers shoos him off to somebody more consequential. But I met the president of the United States and we talked for a moment, but probably it was a dream, maybe for both of us. Thanks, y'all. This next one is called First Real Snow. Thin layer of snow on the ground, more than a dusting, not enough for a blanket. The leaves of grass poke up through the white that fell in the night. Wind stirs what leaves remain on tree and bush. I cannot see myself in the mirror of nature. It is my nature to see myself alone on a snow-covered plain, as if this life were a movie. The future will think we talked funny and too much. They will be right. The snow thick to muffle all sound except that which is immediate. Nothing is immediate. I believe I can see imminence long before it arrives. Perhaps that is my problem. Perhaps imagination is your problem. Everything rearranges itself into a pattern, I like to think. And I like to think sometimes I can wrestle some pattern onto the page before it disappears by turning into something else. When will I turn into something? One of those tiny moths is on the window glass, and now I have helped it turn into something else. Is that helping? I like to think I do good in the world, that what I build will outlive me, that it won't be covered by snow or dust before it turns into something else. But it's already turning. It can't help it. Like that chipmunk a month ago who thought it could dash across the trail before my bike would get there. It was wrong. I didn't mean to turn it into something else. It wasn't dead when I went back, but it wasn't going anywhere. I thought about pulling it into the grass at the side of the trail, but I didn't want the front half, which still seemed lively, to sink its teeth into my hand. So I left it there. Probably food for a hawk or a daylight owl soon after I left. And the sun is finally up now, spreading joy and parchment on the twinkly surface. Perhaps the snow will turn into something else today. Perhaps I will go to church. Perhaps I am there already. Thank you. One final one. I was thinking of this as I was listening to Lauren. In a way, it's a kind of an ars poetica. In a way, it's more of an ars poetica. So it's called Why Write Poems? Because they're fun, because they're not fun, because there's a line floating around inside my head and it won't leave me alone until I write it down. Because then I want to see where it leads. Because I love poems. Because poems piss me off more than just about anything, including too many saints and politicians I won't mention. Because ethicists and philosophers and business executives, please. Because just maybe there is a moment of redemption somewhere inside that little vessel of words. Because I want people to think I am a poet. Because I want to think I'm a poet. Because you can become rich and famous writing poems. Because I was misinformed. Because maybe the next poem will justify all the years of heartache and loss. Because it's cold out and the sky is so blue I can hardly stand it. Because of the poems that make me wish I'd written them. Because I don't care. Because I want to live forever. Because I know I won't. Because this sad and beautiful life is sadder and more beautiful when I write poems. Because I can. Because. Thanks, y'all.
Thank you for being with us, Jim, and thank you to all of the open micers. And, it's so much fun to read the chat because people share their delight with some of the lines and some of the feelings. But I'm going to go straight into introducing our features for tonight. And I'm not going to read their full bios because they've been around too long to have short ones. And hopefully there will be an opportunity to share what needs to be shared. Pamela Uschuk has 8 books of poems, including Crazy Love, winner of the 2010 American Book Award. She's got a new collection, Refugee, that came out on Red Hen and was one of the Orion Journal's recommended books for 2022. She and Bill edited together an anthology called Truth to Power, which we'll talk about, I think, in the Q&A. She also wrote a multi-genre memoir called Hope's Crazed Angels, an odyssey through ovarian cancer. There's a lot of stuff you might want to read there. And I think Bill's probably going to put a link to the her website or whatever else it is that you provided him. Pam, so good to see you.
It's good to see you too, Nina, and I'm so happy to see you because I know you went with my brother and Bill to Vietnam to study PTSD, and I think that was in 1993. And so I took over Bill's classes at Hunter College and realized how hard that was. But I heard so many stories about that trip. So it's really, really wonderful to see you, and thank you for inviting us. I promised a poem about Elon Musk. So this is pretty brand new. From our backyard one night, we had friends over, Cynthia Hogue and her husband, Sylvain Gallet. And all of a sudden the sky changed dramatically. And I think the poem will describe that. But we have a wonderful sunset view, but Elon Musk's SpaceX ruined our sunset. The diaphanous end of the world. Towhee's quick 2-note whistle sears through dawn, a seriograph of shadows stenciled in autumn chill. What happened was last night's white ghost, an angel of phosphorescence, shot like an enormous tracer across the western horizon, from Uranus to plunge beyond Mexico. Stunned, we watch this sci-fi UFO come finally to end humanity, corkscrew up after sunset, arcing slow, slow, slow as a gauzy snail, dropping 2 pods of excruciating light in the spread of its wake. The dogs averted their heads, no songs from birds, and even coyotes ceased to scream after prey. What is that? If it's the end of the world, at least we're with friends. Now the donkey across the wash honks his morning song, as if this event never happened. 4 poets, we were wordless, mouths hanging open like whale sharks beached on a phenomenon wrought by a billionaire, testing his toy rocket for Mars. Musk's 21st century Titanic, lifting monstrous and glorious from California to carry privilege above the curve of torched rainforests and killer Himalayan floods, above melting polar ice and the genocide of songbirds, over the million bleached acres of coral, the mass deaths of elephants and wolves, above skyrocketing cancer rates. In oncoming dark, we stood like non-believers, hungry for deities that would stand against greed and lethal commerce. SpaceX. Oh, think Hindenburg, how beautifully, incinerating, it burst. And then my next poem actually is for Noelle, because she shared her Alaska poems. And this poem, these are pretty raw, these brand new poems, but this one I wrote on the Kenai Peninsula, where Noelle grew up. Kenai reunion for Carolyn Forche. This blue hour after sunset, oil tankers crawl up Cook Inlet, past humpbacks migrating south, past alert moors and rafts of sea otters dozing with babes on their bellies. No one navigates by the stars tonight, not even ghosts. Rain and more rain slashes in from relatives in Siberia across the Bering Sea, which is a deeper shade of lapis tonight. The sky a sea where dense clouds swim in the deep melancholy songs of whales. How do our relatives prepare for the bear drum of the dark season to come? Night takes spume to the tops of spruce. Sea moans with its mouth open, sizzles over the dense vertebra of the beached orca below us. Water's music percussed like snares in a Dvorak symphony. Did our grandmothers sit under the same linden tree? In the next cabin, Carolina, you smell cigarette smoke at odd hours, although no one is there. Tobacco smoke curls under my door. Do you want a drag? Do I? Did the neighbor girl's father smoke? Fisherman, veteran paddler, who died slumped in his kayak in the bay. The rescue crew never found his paddle. Night is thick with the snow of memories, of moose and caribou spoor. Kittiwakes mewling on the pitch of salt waves. Who are we waiting for tonight? After dinner, we tell ghost stories and pour wine over astrological charts no one wants until no one wants dessert. Oh, sweet drenched earth where Sagpiak grandmothers gathered chaga from birch and devil's club to cure cancer, to open lungs tight and crackling like frosted moth wings. We are grateful to the dead who spear salmon along the Milky Way's glacial stream, arching over the Bering Sea, over us, sisters on this cliff, navigating strands of DNA, twisting in our sleep. Now I'm going to read some poems from my collection, Refugee, which came out from Red Hen Press in May of 2022. And I'd like to thank Red Hen Press and Kate Gale for believing in me and for taking this book. And I'd also like to acknowledge that I live and write on Tohono O'odham homelands. And also I am indebted to the Yaqui tribe, the only refugee tribe actually in the United States, who came here from Mexico. I have worked with both of these tribes in the work that I do here in Southern Arizona, and I'm very grateful to them. This first poem is for my brother, John, who went with Nina to Vietnam. John died of esophageal cancer in 2010, way before his time. Bulk. Running on the treadmill, I am thinking about bulk, the bulk of an elephant blocking sun as she walks past, baby grasping her tail, letting go, the tarpaulin bulk of her ears flapping at flies, goodbyes trumpeting from her trunk, tender enough to sense a bruise on her baby's ankle, trunk that can wrap a banyan tree, uprooting it for lunch. Consider the bulk of a manatee, as big as a taxi, nearly weightless in the clear blue eye of a limestone springs. Manatee levitating toward the bulk of my brother, lips touching his diving mask, tenderness he missed in his youth. I am thinking about bulk, the bulk of a propeller as it slices through calm waterways, bulk of water lilies manatee eats with flippers bigger than my head. Manatee's utterly harmless bulk gouged by the propeller's whirl. Or dark bulk, the sheer weight of bandoliers, lines of bullets fed into a machine gun, the weight of a Humvee racking Gaza streets, missiles and bombs vaporizing mothers, children at play in streets, the weight of the Torah, Koran, King James Bible, a mosque door made of myrtle, its perfumed density, bulk of marble and powdered ruby illuminating the Taj Mahal by full moonlight. I am thinking about bulk, my brother's 6'3" bulk, his large hands stroking the manatee's face, both of them weighing less in water than a bale of straw, squinting at one another, their graceful balancing, lithe as clouds. I am thinking about bulk, the small bulk of a 7-year-old refugee detained and dying of dehydration and high fever on a border patrol bus. The bulk of that mistake led tears annealing the world. I am thinking about bulk and the female elephant and the weight of tusks and the African sun branding everything. There is the bulk of 1,000 pounds of elephant fed daily to troops slaughtered by wildlife guards because of a lack of beef. Within a decade, this bulk will cease to be. The weight of guilt passes from husband to wife, father to son, to son, to daughter, to son, a feather of guilt that stops all flight. I am thinking about bulk, the bulk of flowers, say gardenias, or tuber roses, or lilacs in the spring, the weight of perfume, funereal, lotus blossoms, manatee hugs to her chest to eat. Terry Hairston, if you're out there somewhere in YouTube land, this one is for you. Terry is my friend who lives in North Carolina, and she is a relative of Zora Neale Hurston. Talking Crow. From the live oak, crows pull dead leaves, spearing them with crow black beaks. Day dries folded wings over the Carolinas, where sky weeps pavement a darker shade of tears. Here bullet holes chip downtown streets, alternative facts to ropes slung over oak branches that still remember each broken neck, dangling pairs of feet, blues sung in the key of fear. Don't shoot. Don't shoot, don't shoot, folds into the vocal cords of mothers, wives, streaming down a child's witness face. Crows, quick to imitate, learn. In the next section, these poems are poems I wrote during chemotherapy for ovarian cancer. I had stage 3 ovarian cancer, and the chemotherapy was rugged, to say the least. It was cisplatin, which is platinum, and also derived from platinum, and Taxol, which is derived from the yew tree. It was the only way I could feel, one of the few ways I could feel like I was real, was to write poems or to look at hummingbirds out the window. They took me away from the pain altogether. It was, I owe a lot to the birds. This one is called intraperitoneal chemo, and in case you don't know what that is, I had a port sewed onto my lower rib, in which the oncologist literally poured in 7.5 pounds of cisplatin chemo as a treatment, and that happened every 3 weeks. And that 7.5 pounds of chemo made me feel like I was 7.5 months pregnant. It was just incredibly painful. So I had to write a poem for it. Intraperitoneal chemo. Before each infusion, the recipe seems placid, carefully weighted, 7.5 pounds of fluid wrung from platinum, purest of all metals, in a bag hung from the hook, liquid book of the dead, above my head. In the treatment room there is no art, just the stern tilt of the hospital bed, a visitor's steel chair. Even the light is frugal. I remember the scorpion bite, dark as venous blood, clear as the IV needle a nurse stabs through the membrane of the port, sewn onto my lower rib to pour toxins into my emptied womb. It always burns, multiplies thousands of bone splinters, stinging cells, murdering nerves, dulling my mind, my spine alive, a drawn bow aimed at heaven, sprouting agonies, 3 stingy feathers. It's Emily Dickinson's birthday today, and that I stole a little line from Emily, and that is, the light is frugal. Pathology report. Day's scalpel slices to widen the gap for hysterectomy, to remove all hysterical desire, flesh and mind anesthetized, numb as a tomb, vacuum tumors, uterus, ovaries, fallopian tubes, omentum's entire gelatinous shield, suck out cervix, its small knot of disease, 4 suspicious signal lymph glands gallant in their defense, organs of making drawn quick through the slick vaginal mouth, between legs splayed, restrained, tied to the operating table, soaked with blood. What comes last? The useless appendix, faithful observer of 2 miscarriages, collector of bits of skin, hangnails chewed to the quick, indigestible seed husks gnawed after unspeakable loss. Gone now, lying in surgical stainless steel pans. Gone her mind, a nova blown open to particulate matter, piercing sexless dimensions of darkness. As comforting and safe as stars she glides between. She has left her body with its terrible scars. What will she remember years from now as she sits at her morning table, sipping her ration of caffeine, watching wild birds fight over seed, the way she was gutted by strangers who scrubbed her abdomen of any trace of human, her all too human grief? Still, she is alive. Alive, her scream celebrates the strength to make a fist, to lift her head, rise against the constant throb of absence. The clock of making booms in her chest, asks, what kind of creature will she finally be? I'll change the mood a little bit. While I was doing chemo, I wrote this poem. I hope I can find this poem. Because my friend Terry Harvey from Tennessee came to take care of me for a week. Bill drove me to chemo, which was 100 miles away from me. And so he did a lot of work and he needed some breaks. So my friends came a week at a time to on their own nickel to do this. It was just, and they volunteered to do this. It was just so amazing. So this one is called Weather Change for Terry Harvey. Weather slithers through oleander leaves like schools of salmon ghosts, the iced relics of steelhead fins or silver lining rainbow trout cheeks I held long ago as a girl. Sky chills, even hidden scars. The voices of desert birds are faraway water trickling over a granite ledge. Call out the colors of clean air, sweet, filling the cancered lungs of my brother in the last veteran's hospice bed. Call clean air for the lungs of women in Damascus or Kabul who secretly perm the hair of other women in their homes while husbands cloister, click beads, tongues lashing, ignoring the slight breeze of words lilted by wives, smothered by centuries of swaddling cloth, by the slavery and comfort of veils. Call sweet air. Fresh air for the mother bent into worry's hook, air for the premature baby whose moth-winged lungs struggle for flight in a neonatal unit across town, air for the homeless man wandering paved drives in our foothills, community still asleep, his shoulders drenched by a day pack so grimy its history is the cruelty of char. Air for the pit bull snoring in a treeless gravel yard, chained to a stake broiling in desert sun, while his teen owner, a new father, bags meth in his mother's bathroom. Air for a child's hands closing on the first baseball of her life. For the proton in the eye of the observer that changes what a woman sees as love halfway across the globe. Air for all of us, breathing memory's luminous mind, the way quietly it says goodbye. From a river we will wade long after we say goodbye. I don't know how long I've read. I have no idea.
It's 8:29, so you could either stop here or read one more poem that pulls it together.
That pulls it all together. It's it's interesting pulling it all together. So, yeah, I'll read one more poem, and it's a poem for my sister Val, who's a sculptor and who did the painting on this beautiful book, the refugee painting. Speaking of angels and ghosts, for my sister Val. My sister erects concrete angels to guard her house, angels with small icy wings and full breasts, faces fierce as Siberian wind that scoured our grandmothers, angels androgynous, ghost white as borax, giant warriors preserving tranquility in the old mining town where she creates. My sister doesn't believe in ghosts, kicks superstitions in the teeth, even though her intuition is honed sharp on a fine grindstone passed down from our Grandma Anna's genes. She doesn't believe in the blustering of a tyrant who lays down the law, doesn't believe in men explaining the universe. She sculpts beyond what she can see. My father did not believe in churches or priests holding out collection plates, but he believed in God, saw the ghosts of buddies long dead laughing on his porch under the vast black tidal night when everyone else was asleep. They waved for him to join their wild party. He told no one about this but me. My mother's ghost chased her through the web of her mind-shifting gardens. She howled with the invisible girl in her bedroom, made stone circles in the moonlight of her agony. Her ghost burned like bottle flies, terrifying the windowsills of lonely. Guarding our front window, a wooden angel holds her hands to her cheeks, her mouth the O in discovery, carved back, turned to gardenia's lounging sexual perfume. I admire the vast intelligence of birds, animals, flowers, and trees, the way wind sculpts sandstone, water that absorbs light from clouds, earth's angels, hands thrust elbow deep in lithe ghosts, articulate, alive. Thank you so much. Bill. Thank you very, very much.
Pam, that was lovely. That was lovely. And I kept seeing John again as you read the poem for him and mentioned him other times.
I miss him. Here you go, Bill.
So, Bill, there's too many things to say about all of your distinctions, 12 books, all the best journals. But one of the things that really stood out to me about you was your varied experience as a human, not just a writer. And I imagine you'll touch on some of it, but just in your work. But Bill has worked as in a shipyard, a copper mine, a bouncer, all interspersed with distinguished writer in residence gigs at universities, colleges, as well as poet in the school's work on Western Native American reservations. I'm sorry if somebody called it the well-muscled body, roots voice, a sinew, blood, and bone, the well-muscled body carrying light, a gift of passion containing whole landscapes and legacies. Had to read that. I'm looking forward to hearing it, Bill.
Thank you very much. I especially love that particular blurb. It made me feel like a real person, flesh and blood, and all that, Taking up from the web you've begun to spin, the first poem I'm going to read is from the Fault Dancing collection. And it's called Wanderer's Dream of Fire. Looking for one place I am not on my way away from as I enter. Where can I go? My mind blows white as snow with memories melting as they form. One memory, the sure knowledge that memory is a lie time tells itself. As a storyteller babbles on, alone to his fire. Where have I been? Beckoning the fire to whom some stranger speaks. Fire that warms and swaddles him in shadows as he sleeps. In that sleep, he dreams of being fire. This is his tale. I asked Pam what love poem she would like to have me read to her, and she chose this one. Songs from the book, second book that I wrote. All the bones of the horses rise in moonlight on the flat lands and hillsides, dropping from trees, squeezing out from under rocks, disengaging themselves from the earth and the things that live from the earth, and the scattered uniforms assemble to the sound of bugling, come back from the stars, and what has rotted into dust reforms with a furious sound of whirlwinds tearing the faces from the astonished living. And gold flows molten from the mouth of Cortez and returns to the stones and the water and the air, and the redwoods collapse back into cones, and Christ is pried from the cross and flogged and spat upon and let loose among fishermen who scatter to their ships, and enters into his mother's womb, and enters into the stars. And Babylon reassembles, and Sodom and Gomorrah reassemble, and David sings, then babbles in his mother's arms. And all living things return to their sources, and the water returns to their sources, and the sun returns to the source, and the vast darkness returns. And all things are and are not. One of the things I think that you mentioned was working in different kinds of jobs. I did this not trying to gather material, but trying to gather $1 bills in a pile and big enough so I could pay my rent and so on. But I must confess, I loved it, working in factories and on ships and so on. The jobs I would get on a ship, the first one out of high school, was helping to binge tankers, oil tankers. And that meant going down into the fuselage of the ship, like 3 stories on down the steps. And each step that you went down, the oil that had been sucked out of all of these sort of sublets in the ship got thicker and thicker. So by the time you were down to the 2nd or 3rd level, you'd be up to your knees in muck, and you're carrying a sump pump about the size of a baby elephant, which sucks up what's left after the automatic drains gone. That was pretty interesting. If you lit a fire, you would burn Seattle to the ground.
White Boots, Ghost of the San Manuel Mine. For James G. Davis, I don't know if you can see the cover of this book very much, but this is White Boots, a portrait of White Boots by that artist, quite well known in the Southwest especially. And actually, he's got an international reputation. At one point, after I had been working out of a commune collective of artists outside of Tucson in Oracle, he knew I'd been doing that because I left some of my equipment behind, and he painted an 8-foot high, 4-foot wide oil painting that was taken over to Red Wing someplace in Germany in a show, and my poem was alongside it. And this is a letter to Jim. As you know, Jim, I did work underground in the same mine you've imagined in your studio, half a mile down, taking wages enough to make it to California and fool's gold enough to remind me I don't know much after all. New guys like myself, still thrilled by the dangers of fire or falling through the dark into a hole followed by 20 tons of dusty, rumbling ore. We all tried to stay alert each minute of our 8-hour shift. And for a month or week, that's just all it took. And for a week or two, alert we were. Then habit made us careless as the rest. So we'd pocket our safety glasses, let dust masks dangle from our necks, and sometimes catch each other stepping out across over open shafts without first snapping our lanyards to the rusty cables overhead. The buddy system wasn't much observed, so like the rest, come break time, I'd kick back alone against the stone wall and light up, flickering my headlight off, so the dark expanded, floating gently through my eyes. In the distance, sometimes, a solitary hunched figure projecting its small wedge of light would glide by my line's entrance, tiny as a fly in a tear of amber. From where I watched, invisible and isolated as a stone in outer space or inner space, just some guy. Never saw old White Boots in those days, but often thought how all those men just lost in the sunshine mine must have felt. Poor bastards who lived long enough to feel, long enough to lose everything in their minds but hope, before their air was gone, long after their light. You'd have to kill your light to keep from igniting whatever gases might be seeping from walls. So dark is where you'd be, whether by yourself or in the company of others. In such a dark, I had no need of white boots, my friend. But looking at this image, startling, almost comic, you've drawn from the dark of blinding inks and your own heart familiar with disaster. I'm reminded now of how it is the living keep hold of the things that bind them to those gone. How gypsies, when a loved one's dying, will help the ones failing stay just a little longer by turning a wooden chair upside down to hold between them. On one leg, a live hand, the dying on the other, until, ready, it falls free. But the thing is the clasp itself across that final distance, how it allows those last things that need saying to be said. That's how it's always seemed to me, with art, I mean. Whether it's paint on canvas or ink on page, it's the chance for what knows it must die in us to join what knows it will live forever. And knowledge from such a common depth only survives in the light as shadow, as white boots, imago, as a way, meanwhile, to stay in touch while the sun burns on. Here's one of the poems I wanted to read to Pam. Shorter. It's called This Kiss, which sounds like a snake. This kiss. Now you are sleeping, voyager beyond empty realms, afloat upon your own luminous energies, and I am preparing for the voyage Neruda called the poet's one sacred duty, to leave and to return. But first, I must finish this kiss to leave with you, this brush across your lips in darkness, churning with uncommon dreams, our common journey. Hey, she's clapping. And this, on the page opposite in the book Strange Angels, the poem is for Steva and Engla and Steva. Steva is the translator. He's been translating Louise Glick recently. It didn't harm a bit to get with the council over there to have the poems in Swedish. When we flew over, it was what day? Wait, Pam, remember when we arrived in Sweden and what the event?
Oh yeah, 9/11.
Yes. We arrived there on 9/9 of a month that 2 days later was going to be known as 9/11. But before the 9/11, it was just us. There were a lot of people who were going to be marooned in Sweden for a long time after 9/11. And I knew Steva. We'd been together for a number of times. Here and there in the States and in Sweden. And he had a new girlfriend, and I'm going to read this poem because she is now in the terminal stages of Alzheimer's. And Steva is spending 12, 14 hours a day with her where she is, holding her hands and so on. She can no longer remember who he is and so on and so on, but he has, for the last 3 years, refused all invitations to read, to teach, to do anything except just stay by Engla's side. And they were just getting together, and it was clear they were going to be together. And when we were going through customs, they had a present of a necklace of flowers for Pam, and a necklace of what looked like skinned rats, enormous rats, to put around my neck. And I was, what is this? And it turned out to be, well, here's you. I'll read the poem. You'll see. The day we arrive in rain from our far distant continent, Engla, new love of my old friend, having already gathered an armful of wildflowers for my wife, suddenly remembers me as well and steps out of her clothes into the mirroring midsummer Swedish waters to retrieve this long-stemmed this long-stemmed lily she places dangling like a garland around my transcontinental neck the moment I pass through customs, the instant we arrive. Keep her, my friend. Be kept by her. How much time do I have? Do I have any time?
We're about done. Oh,
You know, it depends on how much time we want to leave for the Q&A. And I only have one question that I'm going to
Sure.
ask.
Sure.
sure, but thank you. That was a great reading.
What's that, Pam?
You said it was a great reading.
Give us one more if you don't mind.
Oh, sure. Sure. I'll give you a poem that let's see. Oh, this is in this book. Yeah, got too many books here. This is one I wanted to read too, and oh, where is it? I'm looking for the.
It's right here. Here it is.
Oh, actually, I wanted to read the one about the woman, but okay. This is a poem for the world's strongest man, Vasily Alexiev, Olympic champion and weightlifter, and who lives in rural mining town in USSR, and all the details of his life are in the poem. So I'll just read that. I was fascinated when I found out some things about him, and this poem almost got in the New Yorker. I'd been in there before, by the way, but the editor wrote me back and said, "Bill, your description of tomatoes is inaccurate, and I can't publish a poem if you haven't, described tomatoes where there can be." Well, turns out, of course, he got all his tomatoes, from the streets of of New York City, and he hadn't ever realized that a tomato can be deformed like a fist. You'll see it in the poem. A mist, fine as the hair of infants, rises from the grasses. Serene surrounds your town like a dream round the head of a great sleeper. But you, Vasily Alexiev, you do not sleep yet. You who are a family man, private as a bear, whose deep breast gives deep laughter among your neighbors, the Snopes, the shopkeepers and miners. How tenderly your hands, ominous as cave-ins, tucked in your children and your wife tonight. You do not sleep. You see beyond your window a scar of cloud tucked under the moon's eye. Your hydroponic heart is afloat in your life's blood. What a man would grow must flourish first in his heart. Beside your home, whose lights one by one go out, glows another house, translucent and frail, whose constant light burns through the coldest Russian dark. Here you house members of your family in that other kingdom, the roses and tomatoes bearing your name, both red as blood feeding the broad leaves of your muscle. The rose opens from its center outward as a hand opens to expose an offering. But the other, should it open, spoils its gift, and so turns inward like a fist, swells into the edible muscle of tomato. If one nourishes love, the other feeds the lovers, their eventual sons and daughters. So here are the rows of the eye and the rows of the belly, the rows of persons and the people's rows. In the waters of your floating gardens, both prosper and grow. There is the deep night on this earth into which your townsmen have passed in shifts, passing the grazing cattle that stand among the slag heaps underneath the claw of the moon where grass is silver in the mist. And there is the deep night, neither time nor place describes, when you put aside your book of tales to build a fire, sea wolf, and isolate as a stone floating in darkness, you sit a while, perfectly still, hearing the house's soft breathing. Before you gird your belly, bind your wrists.
Well, wow, and thank you. Thank you all. I just want to say these things before I do this Q&A. If you guys don't mind, people should depart if they want to, but let's see where this conversation goes from here. 2 words about this reading, for which I'm so grateful. Powerful and intimate. I thank you.
Thank you also. I just want to throw that out there. This has been a wonderful evening and Pamela and Bill. I think I'd have to say ditto to what Nina said about intimacy and the power of the words. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Yeah,
Really.
thank you all for your poems too. Thank you for sharing your work. I love to hear the different voices, and that's what makes us great, our diversity.
Yeah. So I'm going to ask this question roughly. Both of you have such a rich engagement in poetry of the environment, but also this, political sensitivity and analysis. And I wonder if you'd speak to how those two live and coexist in your work.
Well, for me, it's not a stretch. I grew up in a household that was very concerned with justice. My dad was a union steward. And when they asked him, and he worked in the Oldsmobile factory because his own father committed suicide when he was 15 years old, so he had to stop school and go to work. But my dad was a decorated hero of World War II. He fought in both theaters of the war, and when he came back and went back to work in the shop in the factory, and they brought around McCarthy's loyalty oath and asked him to sign it, he punched the guy out. And so he lost his job for a year, but he was a union steward and he fought for justice. He was also, we used to go to the school board meetings and raise holy hell about any kind of injustice there. So he was like that kind of role model for me. And of course, having both. Actually, my grandma was a refugee, and I grew up with her. She was my role model. She was my female role model. So injustice was always kind of right there with us anyway. My dad, one of the things he did was fight for the right of Black women to use the bathrooms at the Oldsmobile factory, and he won. And it was a tough war, won battle, but he did win that. And so, so in the natural world, I'd rather be outside, and I think Bill would too. I'd rather be outdoors than indoors. And so I can't imagine writing anything without using the natural world because they're our family.
We should have more writing classes outdoors.
I do. I take them out. I do.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm going to be teaching at Ghost Ranch, which is 21,000 acres of wilderness in northern New Mexico. I teach there every year, so I'll be teaching in February and October of this year.
When I was teaching at Hunter College, At one point, we had been living upstate near New Paltz, but it was a 6-hour a day commute for me. 3 hours to get down to my classes, 3 hours back. Seemed crazy. So what did? We jacked up the pot, and we moved to Tucson so I could fly back and forth to my classes. And about the same coverage in terms of time. But one of the things that was interesting was I wanted to teach nature classes because I noticed that at that time they were not being taught and about Native American literature, but I by then had some experience on reservations on the various tribal nations, and reading a lot of the literature about biographies and so on of people. And so when I got to Hunter, there was not a Native American thing going on, but one of the first things that happened was I said, can I teach a course in this? You know, when I've been traveling around the country, I know Jim Welch, I know this writer, that writer, that writer, that writer, and I really want to teach them in class. So I did that for one thing. And when later, we're both movers around, when later we were moved to a little closer to New York, you know, it was in North Carolina, you know, that's how, you know, right next door to New York. And so I'd fly out from there. And I realized that we were always seeking places that were wild, and very near where we lived, there was literally a swamp. And we walked the swamps often. There was just, you know, like 6-inch wide, 8-inch wide things, no rails, you know, just the walking part. And so I began to mention that to students, and they began asking questions. So I took photographs of different things, of a tree, and I said, you know, what do you see when you look at this tree, you know, for instance? And they'll say, oh, well, it's got bark or whatever. And one of them says, you know, it has holes in it. I was like, wow, where do you think those holes are from? and you know, sometimes it was birds and sometimes it was beetles and whatever. But they began every day when I would come in, you know, to ask me, for instance, did you hear the
Coyotes.
The coyotes last night? You know, were the wild pigs out? You know, and say yes, and the dogs chased one of the other, you know, and so on. And they're just sitting there riveted. They wanted so much to know things, and so they began. Even one of the girls, I had asked the whole class, "What is your association with the out of doors that made you take this class?" And she said, she was from the northern Africa. And she said, I had never been near water. We didn't swim in water, etc. But when I went to the beaches of New York, she said, you know, I saw that it was safe to do that. And so when I'm here, you know, as a freshman, as a sophomore, when I want to relax, I turn off all the lights in my apartment, and I pour a tub of water, and I turn out all the lights, and I just get the light that comes in from the outdoors. She says, and I dream. And that's why I want to know about nature. But it was heartbreaking and beautiful, you know, at the same time. So the opportunity to do that kind of teaching and in a wild place is especially great.
Yeah.
And we've had a lot of experience in Yellowstone, you know, which is great. And it's not all postcard stuff. There's rain, you know, there's ashes falling out of the sky and so on and so on. But it really ignites the students.
Yeah, when I was teaching my last academic job, which I gotten away from, except for the U of A, I only teach at the Poetry Center there. I teach eco-poetics, and I also teach eco-justice classes. I've taught in the environmental literature department, the environmental sciences at a college in Colorado for 8 years. So I am, mainly schooled in the sciences, but I love the science. I am a self-taught birder, but some of my best friends are ornithologists and who really actually know things, who teach me things. And we have one of our friends is a grizzly bear expert, the world's grizzly bear expert.
Doug Peacock.
Yeah, Doug Peacock. I mean, we just know so many people who live outside and teach us all kinds of stuff, but I would much rather be outside than inside. I grew up on an 80-acre farm, and so to escape all kinds of problems, I was just out in the farm. I've had no fear of any wild animals. The only thing I have fear of are people in the woods.
And we must make a remark about both of us always live with dogs. We have
And
two right
cats.
now. Yeah. And it's always been the case for me. I was saved 3 times before I was 5 years old from drowning by my Cocker Spaniel, who I would escape. My parents apparently lapses in their watching me. I would walk down to the Caloosahatchee River in my diaper, 2 or 3 years old, whatever. But the honey boy, the Cocker Spaniel, would follow me, and there'd be a phone call that would always precede my return, when the neighbors would call my folks and say, Billy's in the river again.
This is the Caloosahatchee River, which is a huge river. Bill grew up near the Everglades, and those were his playgrounds.
Oh, yeah.
His parents let him go out there with the coral snakes and
They
alligators.
didn't let me go. I snake. I didn't ask. Why?
I have this image of the dog picking you up by your diaper.
I know. I can't hardly believe it. But not once, not twice, 3 times.
And ours was a working farm. We had all kinds of animals.
Well, I do want to wrap up now. As much as I would like to continue this conversation, whether it's somewhere in the Southwest or we'll be in San Miguel de Allende, and hopefully
I love
wow.
San Miguel. Yeah, so it's a big spot in my heart. I love it.
all right, we need to talk. But any last thoughts on the question or this evening?
No, but when I was listening to Bill's piece, Bill, I've been teaching a class called Lyric Writing, and it's at the intersection of poetry and prose, and that's why I was asking what the form was that you wrote that in. It sounded like a lyric essay, a lyric memoir piece.
Bill Harrison or Bill Yarrow?
Bill Harrison.
I think you mean me.
The memoir in the hospital.
Well, that's a very small excerpt from the whole book, and the book is really a memoir about this sort of 4-decade-long life I had in music before I do what I do now, whatever that is. And so I wasn't thinking of it particularly as anything other than prose, but if it comes across as lyrical, that's actually what my publisher said about it as well.
It was lyric with a comic twist, and I loved it. And
well, thank you.
That's a piece that you could just send out,
That one is not published by itself, but some of the other ones are.
You would be in good company, by the way. Randall Jarrell, the poet critic, said one time, the great American poem is Moby Dick.
Right.
The longest American poem.
Yeah, we've been reading some great memoirs. What You Have Heard Is True by Carolyn Forche is a wonderful memoir, but it's written by a poet, and you can't miss the poetry in it. Drew Lanham's The Home Place it's like a lyric poem. The whole thing, is so beautiful. Joy Harjo's Crazy Brave. These memoirs that are written by poets are lyric. They're absolutely lyric and incredible.
Well, yeah. I'm definitely not a poet, but thank you. I appreciate that.
Well, Bill, Pam, Bill, it's been so lovely to spend the evening with you. Let's be in touch. An audience, buy their books, How would you not? How could you not?
Thank you. And we're on Facebook. I'm on Facebook. Bill's on Facebook.
Not much, I'm
If
not.
you have trouble getting a book, let us know. We'll get you one.
Yes, we can get them for you.
Mainly my books are like, the new one is all over the place, but Red Hen Press, you can order it from the press or you can order it on Amazon. Almost all of our books you can order on Amazon. I hate supporting them. I'd rather you support your independent bookstore.
Or the publisher. Get it through the publisher.
Yeah.
Bill, I didn't mention your book titles. If there is one that you want people to buy, what would it be?
Strange Angels. It's the newest one.
I thought it was a catchy title, and at one point,
Pick it up so they can see it.
I learned that not one, not two other books published at the same year, but about 48 had the title Strange Angels.
Well,
Oh my God, okay.
I'm betting the content inside and the cover were better than all of them.
Why,
Oh, it's a fabulous book. It's a fabulous book. Joy Harjo called me after she read it. She said, this is a fantastic book.
Wonderful. So, audience, be with us next month for Marilyn Nelson and Jim Madigan. Thank you again. We'll be in touch.